190 feet. Fishing trawler is going down in the freezing waters of Barents Sea.
Everybody up! Now! Now! Abandon ship!
उस पे सवार 47 crew members are fighting for their life.
We're all scared. I was scared.
I did have a conversation with God. Okay, I'm just going to jump in the Bering Sea.
And it triggers one of the most daring rescue missions in Coast Guard history.
We knew that there was more people in the water than we could rescue. It was too far out there.
लेकिन क्या वो समय से पहले पहुंच पाएंगे in this freezing and unforgiving sea?
How many people were going to die? Not everybody was coming home.
नमस्कार दोस्तों, मैं हूं आपका दोस्त, आपका होस्ट भामरी, लेकर के आए नया एपिसोड आपके फेवरेट शो दुर्घटनाएं डिजास्टर्स का। ये शो जो आप हर हफ्ते सुनते हैं आपके फेवरेट इंटरनेट रेडियो स्टेशन रेडियो उड़ान पे, जो कि है अ फ्लाइट ऑफ लाइफ। और करते हैं हम इस शो में हर हफ्ते चर्चा एक ऐसी घटना की, एक ऐसी दुर्घटना, एक ऐसी डिजास्टर्स की जो घटी थी इस धरती पे। और आज के शो में हम चर्चा करेंगे द सिंकिंग ऑफ द अलास्का रेंजर। 190 फीट अलास्का रेंजर is making its way through the freezing wind and high waves. जो 47 लोगों का क्रू है इस शिप के ऊपर, वो एक जर्नी पे चले हैं from the Dutch Harbor, Alaska to the most promising fishing areas in the world, जो कि है पेट्रोल बैंक. The long trip out gives a little hint to the disaster ahead. Ship cook Alan Hayes has been working on the Alaska Ranger for the past 14 years. और वो ये बात जानते हैं कि कितना बुरा हो सकता है.
Thanks, Eric. I don't know what I'd do without you.
It's pretty wild and woolly sometimes, and you don't know when that weather's going to kick up and when it's going to come. But half the time what they tell you it's going to do, it does just the opposite.
वेदर के अलावा जो काम है वो भी बहुत ही मुश्किल है. जो बैरेंट्स सी के मछुआरे होते हैं उनका जो काम है वो बहुत ही मोर्टेलिटी रेट जो है बहुत ही हाईएस्ट है इन द कंट्री किसी और काम के मुकाबले.
Unless you've been up there and you try to explain what it's like to get up and work in 20 or 30 foot seas and do that for 2, 3, 4, 5 days straight. I've seen Army Rangers come up there and break. They can't handle it.
Hey, how are you?
I can't complain. Yet.
Have a good sleep.
Yeah, thanks.
Ryan Shuck has been the teleman on the board for the past 8 months. और उनकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है कि मछलियों को गिनना.
We work 12 on, 6 off, so out of 24 hours, you're literally working 18 of them. It's cold, it's wet, it smells like fish, sometimes it smells like rotten, crappy fish. People hear about the money or they see on TV, like they went out for, 14 or 15 days. Each person made, $36,000 or whatever. They sometimes fail to hear what they're going to have to do to obtain that money.
2 दिन का समय लगेगा उनको फिशिंग ग्राउंड्स में पहुंचने के लिए, और क्रू के लिए ये आखिरी मौका है to rest before their challenging work begins.
David.
Captain, anything I should know?
Not much. Got a 20-knot wind, gust of a 27. Other than that, I'm really tired.
You have a good night.
Have a good watch.
At the end of his watch, Captain Pete Jacobson is relieved by his first mate, David Shanson, David Sovera. और जबकि फर्स्ट मेट जो है वो ब्रिज से वॉच रखे हुए हैं, इंजीनियर जो है रॉडनी लंडी जो है बिलो डेक से इंजन के ऊपर नजर दौड़ रखे हुए हैं.
Walked around, checking temperatures and gauges, and just checking everything.
सब कुछ शांत है until.
It was 2 o'clock when I had the alarm go off for high bilge in the rudder room. These rudders always leaked a little bit of water. So I just thought it was not a problem. You know, everything was normal. I go back to the rudder room. All of a sudden, there's just water just gushing. I had just enough time to close that watertight door. First thing I did was call the bridge and talk to David Sabera.
Wheelhouse. Dave, it's Rod. We got major flooding in the rudder room.
Need to sound general alarm and head toward the closest land.
Pete, what's going on?
एरिक हेन्स जो है वो जल्दी से ब्रिज की तरफ लपकते हैं और पहुंच जाते हैं ब्रिज पे। क्या ये सिर्फ ड्रिल है या ये सचमुच का अलार्म बजा है?
We're taking out water.
Get everybody into their suits. Now.
Everybody up. Now, now, now. Everybody up. This is not a drill. Get up. Everybody up. This is not a drill. Everybody up.
You know, I just started going through rooms because we've had times where the alarm has gone off and not everybody responds.
Now, wake up. Get up. Up, up, up. Come on. Get up.
What's going on?
Everybody to the bridge right now.
जबकि दूसरी तरफ सब ब्रिज की ओर लपक रहे थे, लंडी और उनका एक और साथी ये चेक करने के लिए रुके कि जो फ्लडिंग हो रही है वो किसी और भाग में तो नहीं स्टार्ट हो गई है।
The ramp room, which is the compartment right above the rudder room, had 3 480-volt transformers distributed electricity throughout the boat. I knew as soon as those transformers got full of water, it was going to short out and lose power.
और अगर वो ट्रांसफार्मर चले जाते हैं तो पावर स्टीयरिंग भी चला जाएगा उनके साथ, और साथ ही हैं वो जो है शिप का कंट्रोल लूज कर जाएंगे।
Then I hear this screech, you know, like metal tearing, and then water started rushing up.
No, 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 no. We gotta get out of here now.
The flooding has spread onto the ramp room with shocking speed. लंडी ने जो दरवाजे हैं वो तो बंद कर दिए हैं, लेकिन अब कोई ऐसा उनके पास कुछ नहीं है जिससे कि जो ट्रांसफार्मर तक पानी बढ़ रहा है उसको रोका जा सके।
I had the water contained, but you couldn't pump it out even if you had pump, because it's behind watertight doors.
Bridge, it's Captain.
Pete, it's Rod. The water's in the ramp room now. It's flooding fast. We're gonna lose power soon.
Even more terrifying, Lundy knows that the flooding cannot be stopped.
I said, I can't close that starboard vent cover. If the water reaches that level, it's going to flood the engine room. We're going to go starboard hard, and we're going to sink.
Send the Mayday to the Coast Guard. Ron, get in your seat. You get up here now. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday.
This is Alaska Ranger. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is Alaska Ranger.
Kodiak Station. Go ahead, Ranger.
जो डिस्ट्रेस कॉल होती है वो पहुंचती है कॉलियर्ड अलास्का, जो कि तकरीबन 730 मील दूर है उस जहाज से।
We're taking on water. We're about 130 miles west of Dutch Harbor.
What position?
53 degrees. 53 minutes north. 168 degrees. 58 minutes west.
रेस्क्यू डाइवर जो है वो इमीडिएटली डिस्पैच कर दिए जाते हैं इन 2 हेलीकॉप्टर्स के अंदर, वन फ्रॉम लैंड एंड द अदर फ्रॉम सी। लेकिन उनको उस पोजीशन पे पहुंचने के लिए तकरीबन 2 घंटे का समय लगेगा, और किसी कारण से अगर क्रू को ये शिप को छोड़ना पड़े तो वो किस तरह सरवाइव कर पाएंगे इन दिस barren sea.
Everybody was in the wheelhouse trying to put on their suit, so it was kind of chaos. We were all scared. You know, I was scared.
जो सर्वाइवल सूट होता है वो चांसेस बढ़ा देता है फ्रीजिंग पानी में बचने की, from a few minutes to at least 5 hours if it fits properly.
Yeah, I just need a smaller suit. This one's too big.
You can't wear your shoes or boots or whatever in a survival suit, or your hoodie, because the hood will make it not work right. Eric Haynes, he was kind of our voice from the captain.
Okay, you're good. No worries.
He told us the Coast Guard knows we're here.
Is everybody okay? Does everybody have a suit?
Yeah.
At that point, we thought we're going to be able to stay afloat. We're not going to sink. Just have to wait it out, and the Coast Guard are going to get here.
But the Alaska Ranger is out of time.
The transformers shorted out. Boat went black.
Everything just kind of got quiet.
You could hear things popping and pinging. It sounded like maybe parts were blowing through the deck. Some battery lights kicked on.
The boat just shifted.
तो अलास्का रेंजर जो है स्टारबोर्ड साइड की तरफ अब झुकना शुरू हो जाती है और उसका जो स्टर्न है इट इज सिंकिंग फास्ट.
It felt like it was going to roll over.
Abandon ship! Abandon ship! Let's go!
And then there was some panic. The people were inside, started running outside.
The whole back deck was under the water.
Launch the raft!
Crew struggles to abandon the ship in high winds and waves. और कुछ भी प्लान के मुताबिक नहीं चल रहा है.
So we launched the raft, but it just kept going on out. I grabbed the painter line, tried to pull it back, and then it just broke away. It was just gone. Let's get going, guys. I said, you're going in one way or another.
इन फ्रीजिंग कंडीशन में वो सिर्फ आशा ही रख सकते हैं कि शायद वो बच जाए जब तक कि कोस्ट गार्ड वहां पहुंचता है.
It's hard to get up enough courage to be like, I'm just going to jump in the Bering Sea. I hit the water, and 8-9 gallons of water just came rushing in that suit. Took my breath away.
चक का जो सूट है वो बहुत ही बड़ा है और वो पानी से भरता जा रहा है. This situation is desperate.
I could see the raft. It was coming right towards me. It was coming fast. It hit me, blam, right in the face, and then it sucked me underneath. Finally spit me out. Then I seen the backside of the raft going away from me. The raft is gone. So I was kind of thinking, I'm screwed.
As Shuck struggles in water, लंडी के जो वो हैं वो तो उनके कूदने से पहले ही ट्रबल शुरू हो चुके हैं उनके.
And I seen a bunch of lights bobbing up and down, which were guys floating out in their suits. I grabbed my lanyard on my light, pull it, my light doesn't work. I knew then that if I didn't get in a life raft, they wasn't going to find me. And so I just took my glasses off and threw them in the Bering Sea because I wasn't expecting to ever use them again.
The Alaska Rangers reverse up in its final death throes.
The boat was like this. I didn't jump over. I fell.
और finally, Alaska Ranger is gone. अच्छी बात यह थी कि एड हेन्स और कुछ और उनके साथी जो हैं वो राफ्ट तक पहुंच गए हैं.
Thought to myself, how many people were going to die? Not everybody was coming home.
रॉड लंडी, रायन शक और उनके 47 बाकी साथी जो थे वो अब समुद्र में ही हैं, बिखरे हुए हैं, चितरे हुए हैं इन दिस अनफॉरगिविंग सी. और इनमें से कितने होल्ड आउट कर पाएंगे, कितने बच पाएंगे जब तक कि मदद आती है इनकी तरफ. ईस्टर संडे 2008. अलास्का रेंजर जो थी, जहाज जो था वो गायब हो चुका है इन दिस फ्रीजिंग एंड अनफॉरगिविंग बैलेंस सी के अंदर. जो 47 क्रू मेंबर सवार थे इस जहाज में, उनमें से आधे जो है वो लाइफ राफ्ट तक पहुंच गए हैं और जो बाकी रह गए हैं वो सब छितरे हुए हैं इन दिस फ्रीजिंग ओशन. रायन शख्स का जो सर्वाइवल सूट है वो उनके साइज से बहुत बड़ा है और उसका काम है कि उनको बचाना इस ठंड में, लेकिन वो जो है पानी से भरता जा रहा है. एंड डेडली हाइपोथर्मिया इज सेटिंग इन.
It's like a cold like I've never been. My hands were so cold I couldn't feel them. My feet were so cold I couldn't feel. Probably from like the knees down. I was just numb. Well, I kind of kept keeping up hope. You know, they'll be here anytime.
जो 2 हेलीकॉप्टर कोस्ट गार्ड के इनकी तरफ बढ़ रहे हैं मदद देने के लिए, उनमें से जो करीब 5 का था वो तकरीबन अभी आधा घंटा और दूर है। जो रेस्क्यू स्विमर है एब्राहम हेलर, वो ये बात जानते हैं कि जितनी देर लोग पानी में रहेंगे उनके चांसेस जिंदा रहने के बहुत कम हो जाएंगे।
120 miles from land, the water temperature was just a smidge above freezing. We assume that somebody has about 2 hours in a survival suit in those conditions.
With 47 people in the water, the Coast Guard जो है faces its most challenging job in its history.
I think everybody's mentality is we're going to do the best we can, and we're probably not going to get everybody, but it was too far out there, so time was a huge issue.
From his life raft, Haynes can see his fellow colleagues in the water, लेकिन वो कुछ कर नहीं पा रहे थे।
But what can he do to help?
I was just looking out at what people that were out there, so that we could get anybody that was close by. In a life raft, you can survive for days. In the water, you're only going to survive for a few hours.
और पानी के अंदर जो सिचुएशन है वो बहुत ही डेस्परेट होती जा रही थी। और शक की तरह ही लंडी का जो सूट है उसमें भी पानी भरता जा रहा है, क्योंकि वो भी बहुत इल फिटिंग सूट है उनके लिए। और दूसरी उनकी स्ट्रोब लाइट जो है वो भी टूटी हुई है, जिससे कि उनको कोई देख नहीं पा रहा है।
It was just complete blackness. I didn't know if I was going up or down or sideways, very disoriented. And then I seen the life raft, and it was coming straight at me. And my suit was full of water. I couldn't pull myself up into this thing. But God was looking out for me that night. But these two guys reached down and pulled me inside that life raft. And I'm telling you, I've never been more happy in my life.
For about an hour, we kept yelling. And we didn't realize at that point probably nobody else was going to come. They were too far off.
पानी में रहने के तकरीबन 2 घंटे के बाद शक जो है अपनी लड़ाई हारते जा रहे हैं, तो he is fighting with exhaustion and hypothermia.
I was just floating around there alone, and after a while it kind of just got too hard. It got physically really painful. I was just going to unzip that suit, let it fill with water. I did have a conversation with God, and just let my parents, and I had a daughter, just let all these people know that I'm okay going out like this. I'm cool with it. And then all of a sudden I could hear it real faintly, the helicopter sound. It flew right to me, shined its light on me. I was doing this, and it picked the nose up and it took off. I was thinking, man, what the hell?
और जैसे ही लगता है शक कि वो रेस्क्यू कर लिए जाएंगे, the helicopter moves on. कोस्ट गार्ड को ये एस्टैब्लिश करना है कि पानी में कितने सर्वाइवर्स हैं, उसके बाद ही वो जो है उनका रेस्क्यू मिशन शुरू होगा।
The first helicopter, when they arrived, the survivors were spaced a few hundred yards apart. About half of them were in 2 life rafts, and the other half were free-floating in survival suits in the waves.
And the first thing we heard, just this loud, just drone, just kind of coming over us. You just knew what it was. And we waved to them. We're okay. Go get the other guys. We knew those guys needed the help right away.
प्लान ये था कि जो लोग सेंटर से बहुत दूर की तरफ तैर रहे थे उनको पहले बचाया जाए और उसके बाद सेंटर की तरफ बढ़ा जाए। और रायन शक जो थे पहले आदमियों में थे जिनको की रेस्क्यू किया गया।
And then it came back to me, and then it shined its light at me again, and then I seen the rescue swimmer coming down on a line, and he hit the water. He kind of spun me around, put my back to him, and pulled me, and me and him were going to go up together in the harness. I was the first one out.
जैसे ही रायन शक को रेस्क्यू किया जाता है तो दूसरे हेलीकॉप्टर से वहां पहुंच जाते हैं इब्राहिम हेलर।
And I remember kind of looking around and realizing the enormity of the situation. We knew that we were biting off more than we could chew. There was more people in the water than we could rescue.
जो पहला हेलीकॉप्टर था उसमें सिर्फ 12 लोग ही सवार किए जा सकते थे, और जो इब्राहिम केलर का जो हेलीकॉप्टर था उसमें तो और भी कम लोग ही समा सकते थे। और इसका ये मतलब है उन्हें कई बार चक्कर काटने होंगे टू दी कोस्ट गार्ड कटर मोनरो, जिससे कि सबको बचाया जा सके।
I swam up, communicate with the guy, signal ready for pickup fear. They'd lower the basket as close to us as they could, and I'd put the survivor in, and up he would go. And move to the next survivor and do it again.
इब्राहिम हेलर और उनकी टीम जो है तकरीबन 5 घंटे नॉन स्टॉप काम करते हैं to bring out these survivors from the water.
A small life raft floating the Bering Sea led Coast Guard rescuers to survivors of a sinking fishing vessel. The Alaska Rangers started taking on water when the crew radioed in a mayday.
Understand you are flooding, taking on water in the stern. Understand 47 persons on board.
डेस्परेट सर्च के बाद, जो कि अगले दिन भी जारी रहती है, उस सब के बाद एक क्रू मेंबर है जो अभी भी मिसिंग आ रहा है। इस सर्च में कोस्ट गार्ड के कटर मुनरो के साथ ज्वाइन करती है अलास्का रेंजर की सिस्टर शिप दी अलास्का वॉरियर, और दोनों मिलके सर्वाइवर्स को सर्च करते हैं एंड हेल्प्स विद द ग्रिम टास्क ऑफ कलेक्टिंग बॉडीज।
It's rewarding for sure. It's not all days like the Alaska Ranger. That's, I mean, 10 times bigger than anything else I'll do the rest of my career for sure.
और आखिर में जो है सर्वाइवर्स जो बचा लिए जाते हैं वो हैं 42 फ्रॉम द अलास्का रेंजर, और 4 अन्य लोगों के शव मिल जाते हैं उन्हें, जो कि वो दे कुड नॉट मेक इट। जो 5वां क्रू मेंबर है वो है मिसिंग, और उसकी बॉडी कभी भी खोजी नहीं जाती है।
The hardest part of the whole scenario, the whole accident, was dealing with the casualties. You know, especially because I knew some of those guys really well. You know, the 5 people died. Good guys that did some pretty cool stuff out there. That helped people helped each other out there. A lot of people helped each other.
कोस्ट गार्ड को अब ये फाइंड आउट करना बाकी रह गया है कि आखिरकार अलास्का रेंजर को क्या हुआ था जिसके कारण 5 लोगों की जान गई इस हादसे में। With more than 1,500 vessels operating on the Bering Sea, it would be up to them to make the most dangerous job in United States more safer. कैप्टन माइकल रैंड को उस टीम का अध्यक्ष बनाया जाता है जिस टीम जो है रेस्क्यू एंड ऑपरेशन के बाद इस चार्ज कैप्टन माइकल रैंड जो है उसको इंचार्ज बनाया जाता है उस टीम का जो कि इस हादसे में इन्वेस्टिगेट करने वाली थी, a Marine Board of Investigation.
The goal of the Marine Board, like any investigation, is to find the root cause of the casualty, but to also look at all the circumstances involved. What caused the vessel to be in a position that it would have had this casualty?
रैंड चाहते हैं कि जो भी उनके टीम के मेंबर्स हों वो बहुत ही एक्सपीरियंस्ड इन्वेस्टिगेटर्स होने चाहिए, और वो चूज करते हैं बेंजामिन हॉकिंस को।
Tragically, we lost 5, but we could have lost all 47 based on where it was.
और he also chooses John Rideau.
You're empowered as that Marine Board to go and just do everything you need to do to get to the root causes and try and figure out how to prevent that from happening again.
And the ship was in water that was much too deep for us to ever go, and too remote of an area that we were never going to be able to send down a remotely operated vehicle to look at it.
इन्वेस्टिगेटर्स को ये पता लगाना था कि आखिरकार शिप के साथ क्या हुआ था और 5 लोगों की मौत जो हुई थी वो किस कारण से हुई थी, और यही चैलेंज था इस टीम के सामने। और इस टीम के पास फिजिकल एविडेंस कुछ भी नहीं था। फिशिंग वेसल अलास्का रेंजर इज डाउन बिलो एट द बॉटम ऑफ द बेरिंग सी। वो नीचे जाके मुआयना तो नहीं कर पा सकते थे शिप का, लेकिन उनको पता लगाना था कि शिप के साथ क्या हुआ और 5 लोगों की जो मौत हुई उसका कारण क्या था।
The only evidence we had was a testimony of the witnesses and survivors. To start to collect their testimony and to hear what they had to say. The longer time goes by, the more the story changes in their mind, whether they know it or not.
Each had their own story, their own piece of the puzzle. What were they thinking? Why were they doing this? Why did they do that? Some of the key people, unfortunately, were lost in the casualty. You know, the master, chief mate.
Mr. Lundy, thanks for coming in. No problem.
लंडी की जो टेस्टिमनी है वो बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट हो सकती थी, क्योंकि एक तो वो पिछले 10 साल से इस जहाज के साथ कार्यरत थे और दूसरा वही थे जिन्होंने शुरुआत में फ्लडिंग को डिटेक्ट किया था इस जहाज पर.
One of the first objectives was to determine what caused the flooding.
Well, after the alarm went off, I made my way back to the rudder room.
Lundy has a terrifying story to tell. He describes the mysterious flooding in the rudder room and how it spread so fast.
It's like a wall of water. It's like nothing I'd seen. We had to have lost a rudder.
He thought the rudder had fallen off.
Lundy knew that rudder wanted some repair done to it.
I explained to him that the rudder was leaking, which it had been all day long. So I had to grease it with like 7 gallons of grease. And that's not normal.
Just hours before the disaster strikes. और कई कितने ही घंटों के बाद जो लीकिंग हुई थी वो ऐसा ही लग रहा था कि it came from the same place as the leaking rudder post.
Wheelhouse. Dave, it's Rod.
I explained to him we dropped the starboard rudder.
Sound the general alarm.
Losing the rudder fits. It explains why the ship was getting filled in the stern section and what happened next.
Steering not responding.
रडर को लूज करने के कुछ क्षणों के बाद ही कैप्टन जो थे he was not able to maneuver the control of the ship. और इसका क्या ये मतलब हो सकता है कि जो starboard rudder है वो टूट के गिर गया था?
It had to be a rudder.
Given the size of the rudders, if you did lose a rudder, that would cause some pretty significant flooding back there quickly. So that seemed like a plausible scenario.
Losing rudders, it's not something you hear of every day. So it was something that we needed to look at. You start saying, well, how do you lose a rudder?
To find the answer to that question, Rand turns to Coast Guard engineer and investigator Cole Onsor.
I had worked with Ken off and on through the years. I knew that he was a very thorough and detail-oriented investigator.
All right, let me show you. Now.
Olson immediately decides that it was not the rudder which had started this tragedy.
The rudders are designed not to fall out. It had about a 12-foot rudder post coming up out of the rudder through the hole.
This is the rudder configuration.
And then on top of the rudder is a tapered area. It forms a very, very tight interference fit is what they call.
Rudder जो होता है ship के साथ लगा हुआ होता है by an assembly of different 12 parts. Even if it was loose and leaking sea water, Olson को ऐसे लगता है कि rudder गिरा नहीं होगा अपनी जगह से.
It's secured pretty heavily, and the likelihood of it coming apart by itself would seem to be very unlikely.
It's impossible, simply because too many things had to be compromised for the rudder to drop.
So we weren't convinced that the rudder had fallen off. There was something else back there flooding.
If it wasn't a lost rudder,
अगर वो टूट के गिरने वाला रडर नहीं था तो फिर भी वो कुछ तो था जिसके कारण उसकी 190 फीट की जहाज एकदम पानी में डूब गया. अगर हम लंडी की बात माने तो उनके मुताबिक उन्होंने वाटर टाइट डोर्स को बंद कर दिया था, लेकिन फिर भी पानी जो है दूसरी जगह पे स्प्रेड हुआ. और वो किस कारण से हुआ?
Flooding should be contained. Maybe lose equipment, but you shouldn't sink. So you start wondering, well, why did it keep flooding? Why did the flooding progress?
We need to know a lot more about this ship.
Investigators can't get to the Alaska Ranger for clues, but they can get to the next best thing, और वो थी Alaska Ranger की sister ship Alaska Warrior. दोनों जहाज जो थे almost identical थे.
The Alaska Warrior was also owned by the same company, and so arguably was maintained in a similar condition to what we might have found the Alaska Ranger.
उन्होंने Alaska Warrior को मुआयना किया, and what they found was disturbing.
Look at that.
Is troubling.
You get a sense for how they operate, how the vessel's maintained. Watertight doors, which only work if they're secured and closed, would be tied open. So if your doors are open like that, well, obviously you're not going to be containing the flooding.
Another door left open?
I mean, you just looked around the door frame and you see like a 2-inch pipe through the bulkhead that had nothing flanking it off. I mean, it was an open pipe penetration that exposed the rudder room to the rest of the engineering spaces. And then we actually had holes in the bulkhead where she had just rusted through.
Shoddy maintenance, holes and rubber tight, watertight doors tied open. ये तो नहीं बताते कि किस वजह से फ्लडिंग शुरू हुई होगी, लेकिन वो ये जरूर बताते हैं कि किस कारण से फ्लडिंग इतनी जल्दी बाकी शहर में भी फैल गई थी.
As we're looking at the Warrior, it just pretty much validated what we already suspected, that the Alaska Ranger had poor watertight integrity.
Investigators के पास अब एक solid theory है कि किस वजह से flooding spread हुई होगी, लेकिन अभी भी उनके पास बिल्कुल भी कोई आइडिया नहीं है कि आखिरकार flooding किस वजह से शुरू हुई थी. उन्होंने रायन शक का इंटरव्यू लिया था, जो कि अलास्का रेंजर पे काम करते थे as the ship's teleman. जॉब था कि मछलियों का काउंट रखा जाए उनके द्वारा, और क्या उन्हें पता था कि शिप का कोई पार्ट डैमेज या लीकिंग था?
The hull, maybe. I know it took some damage on our trip in that ice.
शक एक इंसिडेंट को डिस्क्राइब करते हैं जो कि उसी साल कुछ महीने पहले घटित हुआ था.
We might have gotten damaged then.
We were fishing out in the solid ice where it was frozen like a lake.
Fishing in icy waters is a common practice on the Barren Sea. It's dangerous and the captain need to exercise caution. लेकिन शक की अगर बात मानी जाए तो ऐसा नहीं हुआ था.
We were going full speed. I mean, I don't know how fast that boat goes, 12 knots or something, but that's way too fast through that ice. You could hear it, it just went.
We knew that she was not built to operate in ice. And depending on what types of ice she was operating in, there was a possibility that she damaged the hull.
Investigators अब wonder करते हैं कि क्यों एक experienced captain अपनी शिप के साथ ऐसा होने देगा. और जो शक बात अभी फिर से आगे बताते हैं उनकी से तो वो और भी चौंक जाते हैं.
The fish master, while he was on the helm,
the fishing master?
Yeah, Kono. He took us through.
और जो उन्होंने अब सुना है उसकी वजह से तो इन्वेस्टिगेशन एक दूसरी दिशा में ही चल पड़ेगी अब. If someone else is calling the shots on the bridge, ये ना तो डेंजरस, ये है तो बहुत डेंजरस बात, और अगेंस्ट द लॉ भी है. The investigation in the sinking of the Alaska Ranger is giving some dangerous and frightening testimony from its crew. एक तो शिप उस बर्फ में से गुजरने के वक्त बहुत तेजी से चल रही थी, और दूसरा जो इंसान इस शिप को चला रहा था वो ऑथोराइज ही नहीं था इस शिप को चलाने के लिए.
Get your signature on these real quick.
Kono, the fish master, I actually had a lot of dealings with him being the tally person. He picked where we fished.
Fish master Sotoki Tonosho's job was to look for the most fertile fishing lands for the fish. और investigators को ये भी बात पता लगती है कि on a previous job, Kono had actually steered the boat.
How much longer till we're out of this ice, you think?
Not too long. You'll get that.
Might have had some damage then.
When we heard testimony from crew that the fishmaster was in charge of the Alaska Ranger, it immediately sets off red flags for the Marine Board. That certainly flies in the face of our regulations, and that any idea that somebody else is directing the movements or the operation of the vessel is not acceptable.
It was against the law कि unlicensed fish master जो है एक्चुअली में इस शिप को चलाए। और इसका ये मतलब निकलता है कि जो क्रू है उनको बिल्कुल भी ये नहीं पता लगता है कि who is calling the shots.
Thanks, Eric. I don't know what to do without you.
Theoretically, the captain's supposed to be in charge of the boat. As far as the Coast Guard is concerned, the captain's in charge of the boat.
You done with that? I'm heading back down. Yeah, thanks.
But the fish master on these boats is like the head guy. You don't mess with him.
Find us the fish, buddy. Find that money. Yes, yes.
इस बात का बिल्कुल भी कोई एविडेंस नहीं है कि कोनो जो थे उस ट्रेजेडी वाले दिन भी शिप को चला रहे थे कि ये बहुत ही वरीसम साइन है कि रेगुलेशन जो है वो फॉलो नहीं करी जा रही थी।
Here and here. That's where we start. Let's have a look.
Was the Alaska Ranger taking other chances to get to the fish?
Takes us a couple of days. Be better to get there faster.
We're there to make money, so everybody wanted to be the first out there, first fishing, and beat the other guys.
Investigators अब ये जानने चाहते हैं कि अलास्का रेंजर की जो नीड फॉर स्पीड थी उसकी वजह से उसके हल को कोई डैमेज तो नहीं हुआ था।
So apparently they transited through ice sometimes, fishing on the edge.
और अब उनके पास एविडेंस था to prove it.
We were managed to get some pictures, some photographs that some of them had taken in the ice.
अलास्का रेंजर के ऊपर जो एक क्रू मेंबर था उसने पिक्चर्स और वीडियो निकाले थे of that previous trip.
We had to analyze and determine whether that could have been a source of the flooding. The Coast Guard also has a fleet of icebreakers, so we had some in-house expertise.
Okay, I got it all queued up here.
जो कोस्ट गार्ड इन्वेस्टिगेटर्स थे वो इन पिक्चर को स्टडी करते हैं और इस बर्फ की जो थिकनेस है उसका पता लगा लेते हैं वो। लेकिन उन्हें ऐसा लगता है कि ये इस वजह से जहाज नहीं डूबा था।
They looked at it and told us that, from their experience, that while the ship may have run through the ice, if the ice had caused the failure, it would have occurred at the time. It wasn't the kind of thing that they're going to hit a piece of ice now and 2 months later a plate is going to start to leak.
Sorry, gentlemen. I don't think ice is behind this.
But in the end, there was really nothing there that we could say that how the ice at any time could have impacted the after part of the vessel.
Investigators are again back to square one.
So thanks for coming in, Mr. Haynes.
And they turn to testimonies of that night, जिसकी वजह से हो सकता है उनको कोई लीड मिल सके।
I went into the wheelhouse. There was all kinds of commotion going on.
जो जहाज का कुक होता है एरिक हेन्स, वो ये बताते हैं कि he had the front row seat of this whole affair. According to Haynes, something strange had happened after they lost the power. शिप जो है अजीब ढंग से मूव करना शुरू कर दिया था।
All of us just plunged forward like this.
What would cause that? When you start losing power, what's going on?
So after that, I went out to get the rafts because Captain Pete said we were going down.
When Eric Haynes launched the raft, it unexpectedly pulled away and going beyond the front of the ship.
And that rope just took off right through my gloves, right through my hands.
Why would that happen? That makes no sense. Why is a raft shooting past the bow?
Investigators को ऐसा लगता है कि शिप का जो unusual movement था और उसके बाद राफ्ट का जो unusual movement था वही क्लू उससे प्रोवाइड करेगा कि आखिरकार क्या हुआ था और यही वो चीज थी जिसकी वो खोज कर रहे थे अब तक। They believe that it might be the thing that the ship went down so fast.
Hey, I've got the plans.
Okay, let's take a look at this.
We started to look at the design of the ship and try and figure out, okay, what was going on.
The team starts with getting the plans for the technical plans rather of the ship's propeller unit. The Alaska Ranger had controllable pitch propellers. These propellers can shift into reverse without changing its direction of rotation. In fact, it is the angle, changing the angle of the blade, which tells the ship to go forward or backwards. But there is some unique feature on this propeller which makes the investigators to look at it more closely. The blades are at the correct pitch with the help of motorized motors.
We were able to determine that should it lose power, the controllable pitch propellers would go full astern.
Let's go! March the raft!
और अगर पावर का डिस्ट्रप्शन होता है, the blades can pitch into reverse. After the electrical power went out, the engines were still running, driving the ship in reverse at the most important point of time.
When Eric the cook launched the raft, he started go shooting past the bow. And then that's when we realized that the ship was going full astern, and they didn't know it.
With the stern compartments riding low and getting flooded, driving backwards would have put the rear deck into the oncoming sea.
Abandon ship! Abandon ship! Let's go!
Whether the captain was unaware or unable to shut down the engines, investigators को ये बात पता लगी है कि जो abandon ship का जो procedure था वो इतनी बुरी तरीके से it went ahead. लेकिन अभी भी उनको इस बात का कोई आइडिया नहीं है कि आखिरकार flooding जो थी, how it began in the first place.
We were struggling. We knew that it happened in the stern. The flooding had started in the stern, but we really couldn't find that one piece of evidence that gave us that, aha, this is what it is, this is where it came from.
With the formal hearings over, the investigation जो है अब उनकी अपना ध्यान केंद्रित करते हैं उस जहाज के ऊपर.
So on one hand, we approached the investigation from the standpoint of collecting testimony from all the surviving crew members. And that kind of helps us build a story of what happened. But in a similar manner, we have to rebuild the story of the ship itself. And it's often laid out in the plans of the ship and the modifications that were made along the way.
अलास्का रेंजर के जो मालिक थे, उनको उनकी फाइल्स के लिए सबपीनो भेजा जाता है, and they start looking through the surface records for some clues. Was there a weakness in the ship's structure, a modification or a routine checkup जिसकी वजह से हो सकता हो कि flooding शुरुआत हुई हो in the first place?
So she was built in Louisiana to supply the oil rigs.
The Alaska Ranger was built in 1973.
And at some point, she was bought and converted into a fish processor.
जो रिकॉर्ड्स हैं उनका मुआयना करने के बाद ये बात सामने आती है कि इन 45 सालों में कितनी ही बार शिप में मॉडिफिकेशंस हुए होंगे.
What the impacts of those modifications might have been on the vessel and how they may have been part of the loss is something we need to piece back together and reconstruct.
Investigators एक बार फिर इंजीनियर केन ऑल्सन की तरफ मुड़ते हैं कि शायद उनसे कोई मिस आउट हो गई हो कोई चीज. और जब ऑल्सन जो है शिप के मेंटेनेंस रिकॉर्ड चेक करते हैं, रिव्यू करते हैं, तो उनको कुछ सामने आती है बहुत ही इंट्रिगिंग चीज. Over the years, small fractures have been repaired in the aft section of the hull. Olson wonders whether they could be related.
It clearly pointed that there was a lot of stress and strain on the aft end of the vessel.
Then he gets a lucky break. उनके सामने आती है एक photograph which was taken during one of the maintenance routine time. Shots where the propeller heads connect to the hull of the ship.
In that photograph is a guy welding on one of the struts. Wait a minute, why would they have to be welding on the struts? And you ask yourself.
Now that's weird.
These struts have no moving parts and they never have to be repaired. ऑल्सन को ऐसा लगता है कि उन्होंने आखिरकार स्मोकिंग गन को ढूंढ ही लिया था. और अगर वो सही है तो आखिरकार पता लग जाएगा कि अलास्का रेंजर के साथ क्या हुआ था. इस हादसे के तकरीबन 1 साल बाद investigators are closing in on what really happened in the first place on this ship.
Gentlemen, I think we got something here.
A series of repairs on the aft section of the ship's hull.
Welds, welding here.
If there was any aha moment, it's when you're looking in this photo of this repair work being done. Doesn't seem to make sense in the first place.
The repairs are for stress cracks. Olson का ऐसा मानना है कि ये cracks जो है इस वजह से उभरे होंगे कि जब heavy steel propellers were added to the ship. The ducts surround the propeller to improve fuel efficiency and thrust. और ये वजन में बहुत भारी होती हैं, तकरीबन 1 टन की हर एक होती है. The struts which hold the ducts in place needs to tie in to the inner section of the hull. और अगर ये सिर्फ बाहरी सतह से कनेक्ट होते हैं हल की, तो उस स्थिति में क्या होता है कि हल जो है वो वीकन हो सकता है और क्रैक भी कर सकता है. और ये भी हो सकता है कि ऐसा भी हुआ हो कि जो रिपेयर है वो ढंग से नहीं हुए हो. Perhaps the unusual repair was done to fix up a blotched installation. Olson had searched the records.
Here are the modification plans.
Olson has searched the records.
और उनको प्लान मिलते हैं, बल्कि 2 प्लान मिलते हैं to how to safely attach the duct.
And B.
So which one did they use?
Neither.
So the struts weren't welded into the frame?
No, sir.
Rather than going through the hull up into the structure and the beams, they just attached it right to the outside of the hull, which is not a good way to hang it.
Now you have something that's subjected to a lot of vibration by the rotating propellers, and eventually these welds that are holding it to the shell are going to start to crack.
And then we looked at the maintenance records, realized that they had done repairs around the nozzles almost each time the ship had been in dry dock since they'd been installed.
If the weld on the starboard strut gave way, तो उस वजह से रडर रूम में ठीक उसी जगह एक बहुत बड़ा होल खुल गया होगा पानी के अंदर आने के लिए, और यही वो जगह थी जहां से कि इनिशियली फ्लडिंग स्टार्ट हुई थी.
The struts being directly underneath the rudder room certainly would have fit the scenario of Rodney Lundy saying it's flooding.
जो स्ट्रट डक्ट्स है उसका लोकेशन रडर पोस्ट से इतना करीब है कि जिसकी वजह से सीजन क्रूमैन रॉड लंडी को भी गलती हो गई थी कि इनिशियली फ्लडिंग कहां से और किस वजह से हो रही है.
Wheelhouse. Dave, it's Rod. We got major flooding in the rudder room. Sound the general alarm.
I still kind of remember that day when we're like, it's this. This has got to be it.
इस त्रासदी के तकरीबन 2 साल के बाद इन्वेस्टिगेटर्स ने अपनी इन्वेस्टिगेशन कंप्लीट करी और उन्होंने लाइकली कॉज जो बताया इस त्रासदी का वो ये था, द स्टड which held the starboard propeller duct it broke, जिसकी वजह से शिप के जो हल था उसमें एक बहुत बड़ा होल खुल गया था, and it triggered a massive flood in the ship's rudder room.
Now, wake up! Get up! Come on, get up!
What's going on?
Everybody to the bridge, right now!
Lack of watertight integrity due to shoddy maintenance led the flooding to spread.
No. We gotta get out of here, now!
और उसको रोकने के लिए क्रू कुछ भी नहीं कर सकता था. The flood led to a power failure. जिसकी वजह से जो कंट्रोलेबल पिच प्रोपेलर से they shifted into reverse. और जैसे ही शिप जो था समुद्र में अपने आप को दफन कर रहा था, the captain either was unaware or unable to switch off the engines.
The boat was going in full stern. We were digging our own grave.
It condemned 5 men to their deaths in the ICC. अपनी फाइनल रिकमेंडेशंस में ये मरीन बोर्ड ऑफ इन्वेस्टिगेटर्स ने था सीधा अटैक किया फिशिंग कंपनीज में बिकॉज ऑफ देयर शॉर्टी मेंटेनेंस, जिसकी वजह से जो उनके क्रू थे उनकी लाइफ एट रिस्क डाली जाती थी.
One of our primary conclusions was the Coast Guard had to go back and seek more legislative authority to be able to require fishing vessels to be inspected by the Coast Guard. to determine that they are being maintained properly, that they're going to be safe for the people that are sailing on them.
The Alaska Ranger got a lot of significant attention and has, I think, really helped improve the safety of some of these vessels, these older fishing vessels that are still out there.
We know that some of those fishermen going to sea are safer now than they were before. But that said, you know, we're tireless about pursuing safety, and we're not going to stop until we know that people are safe at sea.
The story of the Alaska Ranger is a story of tragedy marked by the loss of 5 men, but it is also the story of survival and daring rescue.
Once I got home, it was like I used to be a fisherman and that was cool, but I also knew I never was going to do it again.
I love that boat. I mean, it was like a piece of me went down with the Ranger.
I look back and it kind of haunts me a little bit. The guys that didn't come home.
और इसी के साथ खत्म होता है दोस्तों हमारा आज का एपिसोड दुर्घटनाएं डिजास्टर्स का। ये शो जो आप हर हफ्ते सुनते हैं आपके फेवरेट इंटरनेट रेडियो स्टेशन रेडियो उड़ान पे, जो कि है अ फ्लाइट ऑफ लाइफ। और आज के शो में हमने चर्चा करी थी द सिंकिंग ऑफ द अलास्का रेंजर की। अगर आपको मेरे शो के लिए आज कोई फीडबैक देना है तो आप मुझे मेल सेंड कर सकते हैं। मेरी मेल आईडी है bhambri.r@gmail.com, यानी कि bhambri.r@gmail.com। आप हमारी वेबसाइट www.radioudan.com पे जाके भी अपना फीडबैक सबमिट कर सकते हैं मेरे शो के रिगार्डिंग। आप हमारे YouTube चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कर सकते हैं जिसका की नाम है रेडियो उड़ान, और यहाँ पे आपको बाकी कई सारे शोज और भी मिल जाएंगे। तो दीजिए इजाजत मुझे, यानी कि आपके दोस्त आपके उस भांबरी को समेटने की। आज का शो मिलूंगा मैं आपसे अगले हफ्ते ठीक इसी दिन ठीक इसी समय और ठीक इसी इंटरनेट रेडियो स्टेशन रेडियो उड़ान पे, और करेंगे हम बातें एक नई दुर्घटना एक नई डिजास्टर्स की। शबा खैर, गुड नाइट, गॉड ब्लेस।